Atma Namaste. Good morning. Actually, it's good afternoon in India. So, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our session. Let's begin with an invocation. Please close your eyes, connect your tongue to the palate. Smile at your heart chakra, into heart chakra. Smile at your crown chakra. Inhale and exhale slowly. To the Supreme Being, the Divine Father and Mother, thank you for your wonderful and priceless blessings. Thank you for blessing all of us with divine light, divine love, divine power. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for the love and mercy. Thank you for the divine healing. Thank you for blessing all of us with the inner strength to be regular with our spiritual practices. Thank you for the blessings of illumination and divine oneness, abundance and prosperity, divine help and divine protection. Thank you in full faith. To our respected teacher, Grandmaster Chua Kok Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Mei Ling, all the great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, spiritual helpers to our soul, to our divine self, thank you. Thank you for your presence, for your guidance, for all the healing. Thank you for your help and protection. Thank you for blessing us with your presence, with guidance during our certification process. Thank you for blessing us with deep and clear understanding of the teachings and concepts of pranic healing. Thank you for blessing us with tremendous guidance and success in our healing. And thank you for helping us to complete the certification process easily, properly, and rapidly. Thank you in full faith. With gratitude, respect, and love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Atma Namaste, everyone. Thank you for your presence. 1 second, there's some setting that needs to be adjusted. There we go. All right, and let's begin. So as Sumi mentioned, we will move on to the advanced pranic healing book. In the Associate Pranic Healers program, that's ACPH, we will not be going through the entire book, the entire advanced pranic healing book. We'll go through actually quite a bit of it, but not in complete detail. Whereas in the certified pranic healing program, which many of you will be joining later this year, so be it. So you can finish your ACPH and join CPH. There we go through the book in much greater detail, right? And same thing with psychotherapy. Psychotherapy, actually, there's not that much extra to go through, so we go through most of it. So here we go. Let me share screen. So starting with the acknowledgements page, this is from Master Chua to divine providence. So divine providence is the second aspect of God, the love aspect. So that would be Vishnu in the Hindu tradition. It would be Allah al-Wadud in Islam, or God the Son in Christianity. So to divine providence, whose blessings make everything possible, to my respected teacher Mei Ling and others for their patience, instructions, and nurturing. To Mike Nater. So Mike Nater is a teacher we call Mung Mike. Mung, M-A-N-G, is a term for respect in the Philippines. Just like in India, we say G at the end. So instead of saying Mike Nater G, in the Philippines, they would say Mung Mike. So to Mung Mike for his tireless investigations, and to others for their help and contribution. Then dedication to the people of this world. May this book soothe your pain, restore and maintain your health, and initiate you to higher spiritual teachings. So we start. So what we do, and usually what Sumi and I can do, is we go through, actually we go through chapter 1, 2, 3, and most of 4 and 5. We don't go through everything in 4 and 5, most of 4 and 5. Right? And then we skip forward to instructive healing, divine healing. That's it. That's what we cover in this Associate Certified Pranic Healing program. In this Certified Pranic Healing, we go through, again, all of chapter 1, 2, 3, also everything in 4 and 5. And then we actually go through each of the chapters, not every single protocol, but select protocols from each chapter, and also discussing some of the theoretical concepts of each chapter. And we also go through in the next CPH the seed ideas. Right? So here we'll just go through 1, 2, 3. Excuse me, most of 4 and 5, 1920. So basically, we're covering what we cover in the advanced pranic healing class. Okay. So pranic healing guidelines, I know we know this, but it's always important to remind ourselves. If you notice, it's in every healing book that Master Cho has written, and it's also displayed in every class. Before we start, it's also in every pranic healing center. So number one, pranic healing is not intended to replace allopathic medicine, or in fact, any form of medicine, homeopathic medicine, or in India, systems like Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, none of these. But it is rather meant as a complementary system. If symptoms persist or if the ailment is severe, please immediately consult a medical doctor and a certified pranic healer. Second, pranic healers are not medical doctors, but medical doctors can be pranic healers. Third, pranic healers should not make medical diagnoses. So please keep that in mind. When someone comes and says, can you check if my blood pressure is high? Or, can you check if my cancer has gone away? We are not in a position to make those kinds of diagnoses. All we can say is maybe your Mengmen is slightly overactive, but that could be temporary. All right. Maybe after a while, the person's stress level goes down and the Mengmen normalizes. So let's not make these diagnoses. 4, pranic healers should not prescribe medications or medical treatment. So even telling them reduce your blood pressure medication, we should not do that. 5, pranic healers should not interfere with the prescribed medications and or with medical treatments. And 6, these pranic healing guidelines must be posted in all pranic healing centers. So let's start. Concepts, principles, and techniques. So a popular Zen story, a professor visited a Roshi, a Zen master, to learn about Zen. So Zen is a form of Buddhism that developed in Japan. The professor was more interested in talking and trying to impress the Zen master than in learning. The Roshi poured tea into the professor's cup and continued pouring until it was overflowing. The professor said, alarmingly, the cup is full and cannot receive more. And the Zen master calmly replied, you are full of preconceived ideas and opinions. To learn, you must empty your cup. The professor respectfully bowed to the Roshi and remained silent. And then a quote by GMCKS, miracles are fantastic events which utilize hidden laws of nature that most people are not aware of. Miracles do not break the laws of nature, they are actually based on them. So let's start with color pranas. This book is predominantly based on the instructions given by the teacher Mei Ling to the author. Other teachers also provided useful information. Teacher Mei Ling is one of the mentors of the author in his esoteric studies. A lot of clairvoyant investigations and experiments were done. It is also based on the author's and his students' experiments and experiences. Some of the concepts and techniques are new and different from the other books on color healing. Instructions on the art of instantaneous healing of fresh wounds are given in a later chapter. Many of the advanced techniques should be practiced preferably by experienced pranic healers and not by beginners. Improper understanding of the principles and instructions and improper application of the advanced healing techniques may result in adverse effects on the patients. You should preferably read through this book twice before applying any of the advanced techniques. So let's contrast this with the instructions given by GMCKS in the basic book. If you remember there, he says you can actually just read a few sections of the basic book. I think he says 10 or 11 sections, something like that, within about 2 hours, and then start healing. So basic pranic healing is meant to be easy. It's meant to be understood in such a way that you can read a few sections of the book, start healing straight away. But that's not the case with advanced pranic healing. Even before we start healing, Master Chua recommends, and he has emphasized with the italics here, you should preferably read through this book twice before applying any of the advanced techniques. So for those who have not yet done that, who have not yet read through the book twice, it's really a good idea to do so over the coming weeks. So as I said, we'll go through all of chapter 1, 2, 3, most of 4, most of 5, chapter 4, chapter 5. So continue with that. And as I think we mentioned in the study of the basic book, don't just read it like you're reading a novel, study it. Why these chakras? Why these colors? Why this sequence? When we do that, we get a much clearer understanding of the principles of advanced pranic healing. And once we get the principles straight, the rest of it is very easy. If you try to memorize, it's going to become very difficult. In fact, I think Master Chua says so later on in the book, that if we try to memorize the techniques, it's going to be very tough. But if we understand the concepts, it becomes quite easy. Advanced pranic healing uses color pranas and chakral techniques to produce very rapid healing and to cure difficult ailments. For best results with ailments that are psychological in origin, apply pranic psychotherapy before applying advanced pranic healing. So that's a question we sometimes get. How do we integrate pranic psychotherapy with advanced pranic healing? And the answer is very clearly given by GMCKS himself. Pranic psychotherapy first, and then advanced pranic healing. Air prana, solar prana, and ground prana are made of white or general prana. Air and ground pranas are called vitality globules in esoteric parlance because when they are seen clairvoyantly or by a person with slightly more sensitive eyes, they appear as small spheres or globules of light. Vitality globules come in different sizes. Some contain more units of white prana, some contain less. Ground vitality globules interpenetrate the ground and extend several inches away from it. The denser or more closely packed and usually, they are denser or more closely packed and usually bigger than air vitality globules. Some of the bigger air vitality globules can be easily seen by just staring at the sky for a few minutes, especially before sunset. And we've learned to do this in our basic class. You do not need to be a clairvoyant to be able to see air vitality globules. A lot of you will be able to see them in a few sessions. With more practice, you will also be able to see ground vitality globules just a few inches away from the ground. So just for information, in my understanding, if you notice, he says air, solar, and ground prana are made of white or general prana. And then he says air and ground pranas are called vitality globules. He doesn't say solar prana is called vitality globules, just air and ground. And this is my understanding. I could be completely wrong. The reason is solar prana is not a globule, it's a force, it's an energy. And if you remember, I think we covered this in the basic book discussion. This force of sun prana goes into and fills up an etheric atom. And so that etheric atom, an etheric atom is an atom of etheric matter. That etheric matter filled with the sun prana, the force of sun prana, is what we actually call a air prana globule. Well, not just that, it gets connected to others, but just to keep it simple. So in that sense, air prana is the force of prana from the sun that is filled up into an etheric atom. So that could be one of the reasons why the air and ground pranas are called vitality globules, but Master does not say sun prana is called a vitality globule, because sun prana, in my understanding, is just a force. It's not matter, but I could be wrong. Okay, color pranas. Vitality globules. Now, what are vitality globules? Conglomerations of units of white prana. So basically combinations are absorbed by the chakras where they are digested and broken down into its components. So if you read the book Etheric Double by Arthur Powell, which is one of the recommended readings in our Hatha Yoga, we are told that one etheric atom, when it is filled with the sun prana, connects itself to 6 other etheric atoms. Right? So you have the original one plus 6 others. And that combination, it becomes what we call an air prana molecule. So once it's absorbed, it is broken down. It is digested, right? Broken down. When white prana is digested, it produces 6 types of color pranas corresponding to the colors of the rainbow. Now I might say, wait a minute, the rainbow has 7 colors, including indigo. So again, what we're told in that book, Etheric Double, is that the indigo color is not very stable for some reasons, and it does not remain indigo in the aura. So what would be indigo splits further into blue and violet. So since there's no more indigo left, you have the other 6 colors, which is what we use for advanced healing. A substantial amount of air prana is absorbed directly by the front and back spleen chakra. Air prana is broken down into different color pranas and distributed to the other chakras. Ground prana is absorbed through the soul chakras, then goes to the basic chakra. A portion of the ground prana is directed upward to the spine and other chakras, while a larger portion is directed to the perineum minor chakra, to the navel chakra, then to the spleen chakra, where it is broken down and distributed to the other chakras. All these functions take place automatically or at the subconscious level. So air prana predominantly into the spleen, ground prana into the soles of the feet, up to the basic. From the basic, some of it gets pumped up. Most of it goes to the perineum, navel, spleen, where it is also broken down. So the spleen chakra is distributing not just air prana to the different chakras and different parts of the body, it's also distributing the ground prana that it receives into different parts of the body. White prana is composed of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet pranas. Now, like I said, it's also composed of indigo, according to the book Etheric Double, and that indigo prana is not stable, so it further breaks down into violet and blue. So here you have the color chart. Right? So if you look at the color chart, you have in the innermost circle, the segments, is the dark shade of the color. Right? So dark blue, dark violet, dark green, dark yellow, dark orange. That's the dark shade. The next ring is the medium shade of the color. So that's medium red, orange, yellow, medium green, blue, violet. The third ring is the light shade of the color. And then the outermost is the pastel shade of the color. Right? So if you're using green, for example, you have pastel green, light green, medium green, dark green. Now, some of you may say, wait a minute, we don't really use a pastel color. We do, but usually we call it light whitish green. Right? So when we say light whitish, whether it's light whitish green or light whitish violet or light whitish blue, the shade we're referring to, according to this chart, is the outermost shade, the pastel color. Okay? And we'll read this a little later in the book. So Master Chua says, if you want to project light whitish green, you imagine 30% of light green. So then that would be this shade, 30% of light green, mixed with 70% of white. And as we know, we can visualize it. Let me see. You can visualize it like this. 30% of light green and 70% of white. So if you're visualizing it in this way, it would be the light green shade. So light green is this third ring from inside or the second ring from outside. So 30% light green, this one, 70% of white. But if you imagine all of this is mixed up, imagine this is paint. So you have a ring of light green paint and you have a lot of white paint and you mix it all up, then you produce a pastel shade, which is this outermost one. Right? So that's also mentioned in the book. You can either visualize light whitish green as 30% of light green, 70% of white, visualizing them separate, or you can imagine it's all mixed up, producing a pastel shade. Okay, this is one of the questions when we used to have interviews that a lot of people would get wrong. When we would ask them, how is light whitish green created? 70% of white, 30% of which color, people would have all sorts of answers. But as you'll see, the answer is very, very clearly given in Master Chua's book. Okay, so these are the different colors we'll come to. You have light whitish red, light whitish green, orange and blue, yellow and violet. Okay. Then you have the double colors, orange, red, greenish, yellow. Now, from what I remember Master Chua saying, it does help to visualize the sequence of colors in the same way. So orange, red, orange on the outside, red on the inside. This red looks more like violet to me, but anyway, I think it's better in your printed books. That's orange, red. Similarly, greenish, yellow, green outside, yellow inside. Okay. Then orange yellow, again orange outside, yellow inside. Greenish violet, same sequence. Greenish blue, bluish violet. So you notice one of the things I was noticing is whenever there's green or orange, the green or orange is what we would call the cleansing color is on the outside. So orange outside, green outside. Again, orange outside, green outside. Again, green outside. Right? And then the only exception is bluish violet. There's no green, there's no orange, so the blue is on the outside. Another way to easily remember this is just use the same terms that Master Chua uses. So if you say light, whitish, orange, red, automatically orange comes first, then red. If you look at the other one, light, whitish, greenish, yellow, green comes first, then yellow. So just remember it in this way. Don't say light, whitish, yellowish, green, for example. Okay, don't mix it up. So once you can remember the 6 double colors, the names of the 6 double colors as Master Chua describes them, then automatically you know the first color comes first, then the second color. So orange, red, greenish, yellow. Or going further, orange, yellow, greenish, violet, then greenish, blue, bluish, violet. Okay. Then you have the golden body of a yogi. This is the great teacher known as Mahavatar Babaji, who many of you or most of us know is Paramahamsa Yogananda's teacher. We are told that there's a very, very close connection between our school and the school of Paramahamsa Yogananda. In fact, I've heard Master saying that almost every time he visited California, he would go to this place called the Lake Shrine, which is where Paramahamsa Yogananda left his body. Beautiful place. Now, some people asked, is Babaji Mahaguruji Meiling? And the answer was, I believe, specifically no. So Master Ko, for example, shares that he has heard GMCKS very clearly state that Babaji is not Mahaguruji Meiling. They're not the same soul, but there's a very close connection between our schools. So how to use color pranas? Color prana is more specialized and more potent than white prana. Using color prana instead of white prana is just like approaching a specialist instead of a general practitioner. When using color prana, avoid projecting dark color prana since it may have adverse effects. In some cases, it may have a reverse reaction. For example, light red prana has a strengthening effect. So just to make this clear from the beginning, when we say light red prana, right, that would mean this one, light red. Okay, no 70% of white, it's just light red prana. When you say light whitish red, then you add the 70% of white to create this one, this image. Or, as I said, you mix up the 30% of light red, 70% of white to create the pastel shade. Okay, so just to make it clear, we'll be covering this in the next chapter, in this chapter, so don't worry if it's not too clear. So as he says, light red prana has a strengthening effect, but dark red prana has an overwhelming effect and will weaken the treated part. So we know light red strengthens, but dark red actually weakens. When projecting color prana, it is safer and more effective to use light or pastel color. So again, here he's very clear, light or pastel. So either light green, for example, or pastel green, light red or pastel red. The potency of a light color prana can be further diluted by combining it with white prana. For example, one can visualize the projected prana as luminous white at the core with light red at the periphery to strengthen an organ. It is better and safer to combine a color prana of lighter shade with white prana. White prana is the harmonizing prana. Now, what does harmonizing mean? It is harmonizing in the sense that it provides the other color pranas required in healing, and it redistributes excess color pranas from the treated area to other parts of the body. In general, better, faster, and safer results are obtained by combining white prana, about 70% of white prana, with light color prana. Okay, so again, notice it's very, very clear. It's the light color prana. Okay? And as we saw earlier, light color prana is this ring, the second ring from the outside. So it is safer to project white prana, about 70%, with about 30% of the light color prana, that is this particular ring. So even though over here it looks dark red, just check your books. Hopefully the color in the book is better. This should be 30% of light red, 70% white. Now in the newer books, it actually says 20% of light red. We were discussing this a few weeks ago in the original edition of the book, like the advanced book I have, it's all 70-30. But in the newer books, it says for red and orange, it's preferable to make it, I think, red and orange or orange and yellow. We'll just check to 80-20. We'll come to that. So even over here, this should be 30% of light green. This should be 30% light orange, 30% light blue, light yellow, light violet. All the shades of color should be the light shade of the color. All right. And then the 70% of white. So let's read this again. In general, I'm reading down here, better, faster, and safer results are obtained by combining about 70% of white prana with about 30% of the light color prana, rather than just light color prana, since white provides the other color pranas required in healing. On rare occasions, if necessary, the author uses light color prana for more potent effects. So when he says light color prana, what does it mean? It would mean there's no 70% white. So there would be just 100% light green or 100% light red. There's no 70% white in the middle. Now, how do you visualize it? You may visualize the projected prana in three ways. One, luminous white at the core with the color prana at the periphery. And of course, color prana here would be the light shade of the color prana. And that's what we're seeing over here. Right? Luminous at the core, luminous white at the core, and the color prana at the periphery. That's one. Or color prana at the core and white at the periphery. So just reversing it. But remember, the ratio will be the same. So it will still be 70% of white outside and 30% of color inside. And thirdly, the light color prana thoroughly mixed with white. So the same ratios, 30-70, but you mix it up. So here he says, visualize luminous white light, white prana, being projected, then add a light tinge of the color prana, resulting as a very light pastel color. So that's why I mentioned earlier, you can either visualize the 70-30 mixture ratio or mix it up and visualize it as pastel. So Master says, method number 1 and method number 2 are the same because it has been clairvoyantly observed that these two patterns change alternately, continuously, and rapidly from one pattern to the other. Method number 3 produces more subtle pranic energy and is quite safe in general. When energizing with color pranas, it is safer to flick the hand a few times before energizing with another color prana. So the way we would usually explain this in the classes is we would say if you're painting with red paint and then you want to switch to blue paint, you don't just dip the brush into the blue paint and start painting. You'll get a sort of a purple shade. You need to wash the brush, remove the red paint from the brush before you dip into the blue paint and start painting with blue. So in the same way, when you've been projecting a certain color, you flick before you move to another color. All right. Let's check. Any questions about this? Because if you get this straight, it's pretty straightforward. What else? Is verbal alone workout while using colors in healing? So Deepa Lakshmi, I think you're asking whether we just verbalize 70% white, 30% light red. If that's your question, yes, you can do that. You can just intend that you're projecting 70% white, 30% light green. So you can intend it, you can verbalize it. You can say, I am projecting 70% white prana, 30% light green prana. Or you can visualize it. Keep your book open on the page where these images are. Look at that and say, this is what I am projecting. So you can intend it, you can say it, you can visualize it, whatever works for you. Just give me a moment. I have a PowerPoint I had created last year, I think, for this. If I can, I shall show that to you. If not, I'll show it to you next week when we meet. Seem to find it here. Okay. I'll have to, I think, show that to you tomorrow. Or not tomorrow, next week. All right, let's continue with the book. So moving on, properties of color pranas and applications. So the red prana first, the red prana is strengthening, it is warm, it is expansive, dilating, distributive in the sense that it improves circulation. And what circulation? Circulation of various fluids, for example, circulation of prana, circulation of blood, circulation of lymph fluid. All these different liquids and fluids in the body are circulated better. The way you can think of this, you have let's say you have a pot of water, you're heating it. As you heat it, it becomes warm. So we know that has the warm effect. But also as you heat it, think of it this way. Some of the water becomes water vapor. It starts spreading in terms of the volume it occupies. So it's expansive or dilating. And if you look at the water that is being heated or boiled, you see a lot of movement in the water molecules. So it is improving circulation, right? It's also constructive in the sense that it helps with rapid tissue or cellular repair. That's why we use it, for example, in the case of instantaneous healing of wounds. It sustains the visible physical body, vitalizes the blood, tissues, and the skeletal system of the body, and it is stimulating and activating. That's why we use red for activating chakras. So applications: strengthening sluggish and weakened organs or parts. Second, dilating blood vessels and air tubes, making them bigger, dilating, so that you can breathe more easily or the blood can flow more easily. Third, you can use it for improving circulation. Fourth, very good for allergies. Fifth, internal and external wounds. Sixth, treatment of general tiredness or weakness. Seventh, paralysis. 8, reviving unconscious patients. 9, reviving or prolonging the life of dying patients. Of course, you can't revive them or prolong them forever, but you can to some extent, I guess. When using red prana, light whitish red or light red is used. So again, what's the difference? Light whitish red will be 30% of light red mixed with 70% of white. That is light whitish red. And again, you can visualize it in the form of the two rings, or you can visualize it mixed up so it becomes a pastel shade. Okay, that's light whitish red. Or light red. So in light red, there's no white. It's just 100% of light red. Do not use dark red prana because this has a reverse reaction. Instead of strengthening, it will have a weakening effect on the part being treated. Light whitish red or light red prana has dilating effects on the blood vessels and air tubes. So dilating means it makes them bigger. So you can breathe more easily or the blood can flow more easily. This is useful for treating heart and asthmatic patients. Dark red prana should not be used because it can cause inflammation and constriction. It should also not be used on venereal ailments since it stimulates the rapid growth of venereal germs. Right? So those are the properties of red. When I used to teach advanced pranic healing, I would use this acronym WDISA. Right? So W is warm, D is dilating or expanding, I is improving circulation, S is strengthening, A is activating. So the sort of main properties of red. Then orange prana properties: expelling, eliminative, decongesting, cleansing, loosening. What does it loosen? It loosens diseased energy. Melting, extracting or abstracting, splitting, exploding, and destructive. Applications: expelling or elimination of waste, toxins, germs, and diseased energy. So we know we use orange quite often for cleansing, except in delicate parts. Second, also for allergy. So later on in the book, Master Chua says orange and red pranas are very, very good in the treatment of allergies. Third, kidney and bladder ailments. It's the treatment of orange prana. Constipation. It helps to break down and expel, so the constipation is relieved. Menstrual problems. Removing blood clots. Arthritis. Cyst. Cough, cold, and lung problems. When using orange prana, only light whitish orange or light orange is usually used. So again, light whitish orange, you see the word white. So you have 70% white, 30% light orange. Where it says light orange, there's no white. So you just imagine 100% light orange. There's another method which we'll come to later. Orange prana has a very potent effect. Therefore, it should be avoided when treating delicate organs like the eyes, the brain, and the heart. For safety reasons, avoid using eye pranas on the following: the head, eyes, brain. So basically what we normally say is anything above here, right? You can sometimes use orange on the throat, right? Especially if a person has a very, very congested throat chakra, you can use a bit of light whitish orange in the throat if you're comfortable doing it. But if you're not comfortable, don't. All right? Areas very near the head, jaw minor. So you might say, if I can use it on the throat, why not jaw minor? Because remember, the jaw minor chakras energize the carotid arteries. And the carotid arteries supply blood to the brain. So if you energize the jaw minor chakra with light whitish orange, a lot of that orange prana may go directly to the brain, which we're not supposed to energize with orange. So jaw minor, definitely no. Again, not on the heart. But if you read the protocol in this book for coronary artery disease, you'll see that Master Chua does recommend using light whitish orange on the heart for cleansing and for energizing. But he says for proficient healers, experienced proficient healers. And what does he mean by experienced proficient healers? We'll come to that, I think, at the beginning of chapter 4. Don't use orange on the front and back. Heart chakra, right? Again, like I said, that is that instruction, there are exceptions. Don't use it on the spleen. I've never come across an exception to that. And don't use it on the front and back spleen chakra. So head, eyes, brain seems to be, I've never seen an exception to that. Areas very near the head, you could have an exception for the throat chakra if needed. Jaw minor, I haven't come across exceptions. Heart and front and back heart chakra, there is an exception in the case of heart ailments. Spleen and front and back spleen chakra, again, haven't come across any exceptions. Right? And there are more. So he says, energizing delicate organs with orange prana may cause serious damage, such as a detached retina or hemorrhage of the brain. When energizing the lungs with orange prana, directly through the back of the lungs, your fingers should be pointed away from the patient's head. Is there an image for that here? No, there's an image later. Okay, so you've seen it when you're energizing the lungs from the back, you point your fingers away. Or what we also tell the practitioners is you can curl your fingers like this so that the energy from the fingertips also goes into the lungs. All right. Now, unfortunately, this is an example where some instructors have taken this instruction and really exaggerated it. So Master Chua is very specific. When you're using orange on the lungs, then you point your fingers away. He doesn't say when you're energizing the solar plexus, point your fingers away. When energizing the spleen, point your fingers away. But unfortunately, that has happened where in some classes, it's happened a lot before, I think, and I hope it's reduced now, but instructors will start correcting their students whenever they were energizing and say, oh, point your finger this way, point your finger that way, don't point it here, don't point it there. Now, the problem with all of this is for the student, it becomes very confusing. Because then the student starts wondering, oh my God, what if I point my finger in the wrong way? And then going back to the basic book, students are told, don't sweep like this, sweep like this. Then somewhere else, don't sweep horizontal, only vertical. Sweep outwards this way, don't sweep that way. So you and I, we bring in so many rules that, or the instructors sometimes bring in so many rules that the new students get very confused. And more than confused, they get scared. They say, what if I sweep in the wrong way? What if I energize in the wrong way? But we really have to remember that these fears, these unnecessary extra guidelines, are not from the teacher. Going back to the basic book, sweeping is simple. You can sweep in any direction, downwards, sideways, horizontal, L-shaped. That's it. So yes, there's a practicality to it, as I explained in the previous session. There's a practicality to it, but it's not something to be scared of. Now, same thing with the pointing of the fingers. It's only here, when energizing the lungs, and that too when using orange, that we have to be careful about the fingers. Not for other colors, not for other parts of the body. So by bringing in too many such guidelines, it causes confusion, it causes fear. So let's try and keep it as simple as possible. And I'm telling you this because, as I said, once you're close to finishing with your certification, the new students will come to you. They'll say, hey, you're a certified healer. Can you explain this to me? So our job is to understand Master Choa's pranic healing as he meant us to understand it, keeping it as simple as possible. So that when you explain to others who come to you, you encourage them, nurture them, inspire them, motivate them, help them to see how simple this is. So that we don't add fear or confusion to it. Right? It is not advisable to energize the jaw minor chakras with orange prana, since these chakras also energize the brain through the carotid arteries. Do not apply orange prana on the spleen or the spleen chakra, because the spleen chakra is directly connected to all the major chakras, including those on the head. Orange prana should be used with caution on the solar plexus and on the navel, since it may cause loose bowel movement. Orange prana is used for treating constipation, since it stimulates bowel movement. Orange prana should not be used on patients suffering from appendicitis, because it may accelerate the rupture of the inflamed appendix. Orange prana is also used to facilitate the abstraction of consciousness of a dying patient, meaning helping the soul to leave the body. Light whitish orange has strong cleansing effect, etherically and physically. Etherically, it expels used up energy and diseased energy. Physically, it is essential in the elimination of waste matter. Light whitish orange and light whitish red are used for treating allergy. Other color pranas can also be used in treating allergy, but for more lasting and faster results, especially in severe allergies, light whitish orange and light whitish red have to be used. I think somebody had a question. Yes, Anupama. Go ahead, Anupama.
I wanted to ask, here it's written, avoid using orange prana on front and back spleen chakras.
Yeah,
So is it for both cleansing and energizing, or it is just for energizing?
both cleansing and energizing for both of them, right? And Alka saying, can we use orange prana on the ear? No. So anything in the head, right? So head, eyes, brain, ears, anything here. So basically, I normally think of it this way: from the chin up, I don't use orange. Throat sometimes, but even sometimes the neck. If a person has spondylitis, then I might use it. Right? Throat, I might use it. But you need to be confident of using it, number one. Number two, the shade of orange has to be really, really light. And number three, if you want, localize with blue before you use orange, so the orange does not spread. All right, then Pooja said, luminous light and brilliant light. Can you describe? So let's keep it a little more simple. Usually we have two types of white that we use in pranic healing. One is the bright white, luminous, or whether you use luminous, brilliant, whatever it is, think of it like a very bright LED light. Or in the olden days, you had these tube lights. Okay? So it is bright, it is luminous. That's the way you visualize the white prana. But when you're using electric violet, there the electric white, now again, it might be called brilliant, but the electric white there is much, much, much brighter. So for example, you can visualize that white as being like lightning. It's so bright, you can't even look at it. Or I think in the book, Master says when a person is doing welding, that kind of brilliant white. So the ordinary pranas, ordinary violet, ordinary red, ordinary green, it's a bright white, like a nice bright white bulb, but you can still look at it. Whereas the electric violet, it is so brilliant, you almost feel I can't look at it. You have to look away. So it's the brilliance that is the difference. Okay. Can we localize? This is from Janvi, the area near the head and use red and orange. So yes, as I said, not on the head, but if you want throat or a person has spondylitis, you want to localize before using orange, you can do so. On the head itself, we usually don't, but there are exceptions again. So for example, the protocol for tinnitus, there's an exception, right? Or the hair growth, there's an exception. So there are usually always exceptions, but in general, we don't use orange in the upper parts of the body. Can you please show how to energize the lungs? There's an image later, but imagine the patient is in front of me, right? The back of the patient is in front of me. So you can keep your hands like this and turn them to the sides. The idea is the head of the patient would be here, and I don't want the orange to go to the head. So by turning my hands to the sides, the orange goes away from the head. Or what I tend to do is keep my hands cupped like this, so that even the prana from the fingertips goes into the lungs. And especially since many of us are going to use the clockwise energizing technique, this also becomes easier. You can move it clockwise like that, so that the light whitish orange goes into the lungs. Now, this is only for orange. It doesn't really matter for, let's say, energizing the lungs with green, maybe, or with red, or with violet. It doesn't matter. Anupama saying, where did Anupama's question go? Can you please clarify the right use of light whitish orange in cleansing the spine? I don't know what you mean by the right use, but again, based on what we're discussing, we usually don't use light whitish orange in the upper part of the spine because it's very close to the head and the neck. So usually the upper part of the spine, we just use light whitish green, but once, let's say, it reaches around the back heart chakra level, then you can use light whitish orange. That's what I usually do. For varicose veins, energizing the back heart. We'll come to varicose veins a little bit later. But if the protocol says green and orange, use the orange, unless you're not comfortable or confident using it. Mansi saying the whole spine in one go, can we use light whitish green and light whitish orange to cleanse? So I think, Mansi, you're asking, can I go from the nape of the neck all the way down to the base of the spine? Yes. But as I just said, personally, I don't use light whitish orange at the nape of the neck. So for green, I will go from the neck to the basic chakra or the base of the spine. But for orange, I probably start lower down, somewhere near the back heart level for orange. But violet, again, you can go from the nape of the neck all the way down. Hemalata, in tinnitus, we are projecting green and orange. Can you clarify? Clarify what? I don't know what you want me to clarify. Gayatri, on throughout, can we localize with blue and use orange or apply with green? I think, Gayatri, you're asking, can we localize with blue and use orange wherever? Answer, no. You don't use orange above, right? Except in a few cases where the protocol specifies it, like tinnitus or hair growth, do not use orange as mentioned just now. Don't use orange above the neck, which means above the neck means includes the ears, includes the jaws, includes the temples, includes all this area, no orange, right? Even near the head. So technically, even this region, you don't use orange. It's near the head. But as we become more proficient, if needed, and that's why I'm giving examples, for spondylitis, using orange on the shoulders helps. So even though it is near the head, right? If you're confident. And to make it even more sort of safe, you use blue to localize. Similarly, for the throat chakra, sometimes if it's very congested, let's say heavy smoker, using light whitish orange to clean the throat chakra really helps. But it is close to the head. So once again, you could use blue if you want to localize before you use orange. Nerve deafness protocol, we use very light whitish orange for cleaning. after localizing with blue. Brilliant. Thanks, Anita. Itching, use blue, allergy, red. Now, Tina, why red for allergies? I don't know. That's basically, I guess, something that Master Chua noticed works in his research. Why specifically does red work for allergies? I don't have an answer for that. Komal is saying, would this apply even while doing distant healing? What is this? I'm not sure what this you're referring to. In the case of skin allergy and itching in the affected area, can we use orange and red for energizing? Yes, allergies, orange and red works. Can we use blue, orange, blue on the jaw chakras? No, normally we don't use orange on the jaw minor chakras. So Himalaya, I don't know what you're asking. It says in tinnitus, we are projecting green and orange. Can you clarify? I don't know what you want me to clarify. Like, what's the specific question? Yes, we use green and orange in tinnitus. So you make a blue tube and you visualize the blue tube in the ear and use green and orange. But what clarification are you looking for? The pointing of the fingers. Yes, so going back to Komal's question, even for distance healing, if you're energizing the lungs with orange and distance healing, either visualize your fingers pointing away or curling. Sai is saying red has multiplying effect. In the case of allergies, how does it work? Like I said, I don't know. So that we'd have to look clairvoyantly to see specifically what does the red do. So maybe by strengthening that part of the body, it prevents the body from reacting. That could be one possible answer. I'm not too sure. Maybe by improving the circulation, there's a benefit. So you could perhaps ask a doctor as well. So when there's an allergy, what is happening in the physical body? Why is there an allergy? And then maybe based on that, we can try to understand how the properties of red may be helping to address the allergy. So maybe the strengthening effect of red works, maybe the improving of circulation helps. Who knows? There could be many possible reasons, right, as to why red works for allergies. Okay. If the spleen is predominantly involved in absorbing air prana and distributing the digested prana, what are the other chakras doing? They're also absorbing prana. So each chakra absorbs prana that it requires and distributes it, but a lot of the prana is absorbed through the spleen, just like air. Though most of the air that we inhale is through the nose, we also absorb some amount of air from our skin pores. So like that, right? What else? We have a bit of time, so let's go back. By the way, I found this. Let me share this. Right. So this is the color chart that we have from your book. So this is the dark red in the middle. Okay. Then you have the medium red, the light red, and the pastel red. Right. So when we're projecting light whitish red, we're using 70% of white, that is this shade, and 30% of light red. Okay. Not the others. So it's 30% of light red. That is one way of doing it. And as we saw, right, you can, where is that? Yeah, this is the one, or do I have it earlier? This is the one. Or as we saw, you can also mix it up. So I didn't get the exact colors, but something like this. So this is white paint. You add a bit of light red, you mix it up, and it becomes a pastel shade. So instead of visualizing the red separate as a ring, 30%, the white separate, 70%. That's one way of doing it. You imagine it mixed up like we are mixing up over here with the paints, and you get a pastel shade. So if you're visualizing it as a pastel shade, then you just visualize all the color coming out of your hand as being this pastel shade. There's no ring of white, ring of red. All right, so that will be the pastel shade or the light whitish red shade. Or you can imagine them separately as we see over here. You imagine the red separate, 30% of light red, and the white separate, 70% of white. Right? Is there anything else here? Yeah, so 70% white, 30% light red. Or imagine this getting mixed up, it's just 100% of the pastel shade. Right? So it's again not light red, but something like this. So if you're visualizing the red outside, it's 30% red, 70% white. If you're reversing it, it's still 30% red, 70% white. So both of these are okay. Or you imagine these two shades being mixed up like the paint we saw earlier, producing a pastel shade. So you can visualize the colors in any of these three formats. Okay, but keep in mind the shade of red, if you're projecting light whitish red, the shade of red is this shade, the light shade. Okay, so 70% of light red, 30% of light red, 70% of white, okay, with either the red outside or the red inside, or you imagine this being mixed up, producing a pastel shade, which is this one. All right. Now, supposing Masachua says, like we've seen in this chapter, project light red prana. Notice he's not saying light whitish red. He's saying light red. So then what do we do? 70% of white, but what do we mix it with? 30% of what? What would be your answers? So Alka is saying 30% of medium. Anyone else? Okay, Janvi is saying medium. Who else? Anyone else wants to take a guess? Gayatri, medium. Brilliant. Anita, medium. Perfect. So medium is the right answer. I'm grateful. I'm glad you got it, because not to make you feel super, not to put anyone down, but when we were initially starting with our interviews, we had a few instructors, advanced pranic healing instructors, who could not answer that question properly. So one of the really good things that has come out of several years of this certification study is that the concepts have become very, very clear. So yes, if you want light red, then you mix 70% of white with 30% of the medium shade. Or again, you can mix it up and imagine just the light shade passing through. Okay, so light red could be either 100% of the light shade or 70% of white with 30% of the medium shade. All right, that would be light red. So 70% white, 30% of medium red, or just 100% of light red. And the same process follows. If you want to project medium red now, what would you do? Let's say 70% white, and now it'll be 30% of dark red, or you mix it up and you get just 100% of medium red. Okay. Now, lastly, when it comes to dark red, we have no choice. We just project 100% dark red. There's nothing else you can mix it with. There's no darker shade in this color palette that we can mix it with. Okay, so let's go backwards. Dark red is just 100% dark red. Just imagine this shade of color coming out of your hands. Okay, medium red, two ways. Either you project medium red, so whatever is coming out of your hand is that medium red shade, or you do a 70-30 mix, 70% white, 30% of the dark shade. Okay, same thing. Going back, light red, you project 100% of the light shade or 30% of medium red with 70% white. And then the most common one that we use, you have the pastel shade. Where is that gone? Yeah, it's either 100% of the pastel shade or 70% white, 30% of the light shade. All right, so those would be how you project the different shades of the colors. Dark shade, medium shade, light shades, light whitish shade. All right, let's go back to the book. So let's look at green prana. So the way I do it, I think of orange prana as being like bleach. Very effective, very powerful, but you have to be careful on which clothes you use it. You can't use it on all different clothes. Whereas I think of green prana as being like soap. It's gentler than bleach and it's safe to use everywhere. So think of it that way. Green is like soap. You can use it all over the body. Orange is like bleach, very potent, very powerful, but we have to be careful when we use it, where we use it. Okay. So properties of green prana: breaking down, excuse me, digestive, decongesting, cleansing, detoxifying, disinfecting, dissolving, loosening of diseased bioplasmic matter. Now notice he's not saying energy here, he's talking about actually the etheric matter and destruction or breaking down of dead and diseased cells. So basically a lot to do with cleansing, disinfecting. So that's green, primarily a cleansing color. Applications, breaking down of a blood clot. And of course, you could use orange as well, depending on where the clot is. Disinfecting. So it's very good for infections. Cold, fever. Used in localized sweeping for decongesting and loosening stubborn diseased energy. Green or orange prana is usually used in decongesting and cleansing a diseased part by loosening the diseased bioplasmic matter. After being loosened, the diseased bioplasmic matter is removed by localized sweeping, and the affected part is then energized. The loosening and expelling of the diseased bioplasmic matter with green or orange prana will enable fresh prana to enter the affected part, thereby restoring health to the treated part. Green prana is milder and safer as compared to orange prana. When internal organs are to be energized with orange prana, it is advisable to use green prana first before projecting orange prana as a safety precaution. It is advisable to use light green prana first before energizing with more potent pranas like orange, red, and violet as a precautionary measure to avoid possible radical reaction or harm. So you notice in most of our protocols, when we're energizing, we start with green. So it's green, orange, red, green, blue, violet, or green and violet. And one of the answers is mentioned here, that the green prana is used to avoid possible radical reaction. Now, what is radical reaction? If, for example, there is still some dirty energy in that area and we energize, it may cause a temporary increase in symptoms, radical reaction. So here, by using green first, even if there is some dirty energy in that affected chakra or organ, when you energize first with green, it helps to break down, disintegrate, remove that dirty energy. So now when the subsequent colors like orange or red or violet go in, they don't cause a radical reaction. So that's one answer as to why invariably when we energize, it's green first. Energizing first with light green prana and then with light orange prana is very effective in decongesting, expelling, and cleansing physically and bioplasmically or etherically the part being treated. Please notice the sequence. Light green prana is used first to break down the diseased energy, then light orange prana to expel the loosened diseased energy, and not orange prana first, nor both simultaneously. So green, then orange. I remember Sumi used to say, imagine you're telling the dirty energy to go away. So go, G-O, green first, then orange. Now here, when light orange green prana, so orange green prana now means we're combining it like a double color. Okay, so though Master Chua says not green and orange simultaneously, he's saying here when light orange green prana, so that means light orange, light green. What is outside? Orange. What is inside? Green. And he says more of green prana, less of orange prana. Okay, so it's not light whitish orange green, though you could produce that as well. So light whitish orange green would then be 70% white, and he says more green. So let's say 20% green, 10% orange. Or if you remove the white, not light whitish orange green, just orange green, then maybe if you want, you can have something like, let's say, 60% green, 40% orange. I've never used this, right? But when light orange green prana is projected, or when both orange prana and green prana are projected simultaneously, the effects of these pranas are multiplied several times. Therefore, the effect is destructive to a certain degree and is used in dissolving deposits. When the darker shades of green prana and orange prana are used, the effect is quite destructive. And we've seen that. For example, treatment of cancer, we use medium green or dark green, medium orange or dark orange. So Master Chua says, hence they're used in treating certain types of cancers. Blue prana is first used to localize the disintegrating effect of the projected pranic energy on the affected part. So when you're using medium green, dark green, we don't want to cause a problem on the healthy cells, only on the cancer cells. So how do we restrict the effect of the dark colors on the cancer cells? Through localizing. We have a bit of time, so let's finish yellow, and then I think we can pause. Or we do yellow blue, and then next week we can start with violet, because violet and electric violet are much longer in terms of content. So yellow prana, properties, cohesion. Cohesion is bringing something together. Okay, the act of forming a united whole. Cohesion or cementing. So the cohesion effect you come across in the treatment of eyes, where Master Chua says the meridians in the eyes are so thin, so fine, it's difficult to clean them. So when you use yellow prana on the Agnya chakra, it causes the dirty energy to clump together, the cohesive effect, then you can sweep. Of course, that yellow would be from the crown. Now, cementing, we've seen that in the treatment of broken bones or fractures. That's yellow from the basic. Assimilating, multiplying, growing. So we see this in the use of orange, yellow, for example, for the bones, or hair growth, red and yellow. Assimilating is where you use yellow prana in the case of transplanted organs to help the patient assimilate the transplanted organs. Stimulating effect on the nerve. You see this sometimes in the treatment of eyes, where you energize the backhead minor chakra with yellow from the crown. Initiating or starting. This is especially with orange prana when you want to trigger bowel movement. And 5, necessary for strong and healthy tissues, organs, and bones. Applications. You can use yellow prana for broken bones. You can use it for skin problems, cellular repair, developing strong, healthy tissues, organs, and bones, and for improving assimilation. Yellow prana alone should not be used in treating wounds, burns, or broken bones, because scar tissue or overgrowth will be formed. The proper treatments for these cases are given in a later chapter. And then blue, we'll stop with that today. Properties of blue: disinfecting and disinflaming. Excuse me, inhibiting, so that is the opposite of red. Localizing and contracting, again opposite of red. Soothing and mild anesthetic. Cooling, again opposite of red. Pliability or flexibility. Blood clotting would be the effect. So in many cases, we think of blue as being like an anti-red color, or red as being an anti-blue color. So applications: ailments due to infection, removing pain, reducing inflammation, inhibiting chakras, organs, and motor action, inducing rest and sleep, stopping bleeding, bringing down fever. An experiment was done by the author on a paralyzed patient. Treatment was first given on the brain, then to the right arm. Light blue prana was directed to the affected right arm for several minutes. As a result, the patient had greater difficulty in raising his right arm. When light red prana was directed to the affected area, the patient was able to move his right arm with greater ease. The next day, there was even greater improvement. This shows that blue prana has an inhibiting effect. So not just inhibiting chakras, but as we see up here, even motor action, while red prana has a strengthening effect and stimulating effects. All right, so that's where we'll stop for today. And if you have any questions, I think I saw something in the chat box. Pliability. Okay, let's go back. Pliability. Best option is to use Google Dictionary. Where is pliability? There we go. So pliability, the quality of being easily bent or being flexible. Easily bent, flexible. Now, we're not using it in the sense of easily influenced, but easily bent, easily flexible. So I remember Dr. Kshitij, when he was taking the ACPH program, CPH program many years ago, I heard him explain this. When we use blue in the head for the treatment of migraines, one reason we use blue is because the blood vessels in the head have dilated. They become bigger. So the blue helps to constrict them to their normal size. But he says also it helps to make the blood vessels more pliable. But I don't have more information about that right now. All right, questions? Yes, Vaishali, go ahead.
Atma Namaste Shriram.
Atma Namaste.
Cohesion means green and yellow color together.
No, cohesion is just yellow. Yellow has a cohesive effect. Green does not have a cohesive effect.
Okay, because in some I forgot, but where it was mentioned cohesion for cohesion effect, it was a yellow green and 15 green, 15 yellow, and 70 white. So I had that doubt. So I
I'll have to
asked.
check on that. Usually, from what I remember, greenish yellow is more for regeneration of delicate parts, but the
Yes.
cohesive effect of bringing things together would be the yellow, for example, on the eyes. But let's see, when we read the book, maybe we'll come across what you're mentioning.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Alka.
Sorry, I didn't have any question.
Okay.
I noticed that in all the protocols, master has mentioned not to use the dark colors
Mhm.
of any of the colors. And I was just thinking it is like water. If you heat it too much, say you're using it for sore throat, if you use hot water, you're going to burn yourself. But you use lukewarm, it's that's
Mm.
what you're supposed to use. And the same way for a hot press, if you use very, very hot press, you're going to burn your skin. But if you're going to use the normal, warm water, it will be nice. So I
Ah, cool.
guess anything in extreme is not
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Shivani, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Atma Namaste, sir.
Atma Namaste, ma'am.
So when we were discussing about the light orange and green prana, so in this last paragraph of green prana, it is mentioned that just a second. Light green prana is used to first break down the disease energy, and then light orange is used to expel the loosened disease energy. And not orange prana first, nor both simultaneously. So in the first sentence, it is written nor both simultaneously, but in the other sentence, it is written when they are both used projected simultaneously, the effects of these is multiplied several times. So
Correct.
I got little confused.
So in
Whether
general, we
they
don't use green and orange simultaneously. But as he
okay.
says, in some cases, like he says, in the case of disintegrating or dissolving deposits, you can use them simultaneously if required. But in
Okay.
general, we don't use them simultaneously.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. And the last question, I think, from Sachi.
Atmanasi, sir. I have a
Namaste.
question on karma, if I may ask.
On karma. Okay. Well, I think we're done for today. So yes, we have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, how does karma work when there's a one person and there's a mass, genocide? For example, I'll give you two examples. Like there's a Hitler and there's a Jew, and a mass killing, and then there's a President Truman one side, and then the Hiroshima Nagasaki. So this is my first question,
So
and
how
the
does karma
second one
work?
is,
Meaning, I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean? How does karma work?
how does it implies when there's a one
Well, it's
person
only
and
those, only those people who are meant to be the Jews affected by Hitler were affected by Hitler. The others were not. So if the person was born as a Jew at that time and happened to be in those European countries where Hitler's influence extended, they would have been affected. And from our understanding, not to lack compassion, but it was like karma to be there. Now, some Jews in Europe were able to escape. Some Jews were not able to escape. Some maybe were living in other countries right from the beginning, so they never had much of an impact, even though they were Jews. And some were not born yet at that time. Some may have died before Hitler started his campaign. So that's how the karma works, that it's only those who unfortunately had karma to be worked out at that time who would have been in those places. Same thing with the Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the bombings. Only those who were meant to be there would have been there. Are you there?
and so how a karma of this the person who's giving the orders like Hitler and the soldiers who are performing those acts,
Mhm.
like in the case of President Truman, he is also ordering, and then there's a pilot who actually
So they
did
would all
that.
have certain karma involved. Now, whose karma is more? I think answer is it depends. So, for example, with soldiers, Master said if they do it as duty, like the story of Arjuna and Krishna, then the karma is less. If they do it out of anger, hatred, the karma is more. So you can't really say this is how it is. My answer would depend on multiple factors, including the person's own attitude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think of the pandemic recently, right? So many children who were born, let's say, post 2022, they never experienced it, except indirectly, maybe through their parents. People who passed away 2020 never experienced it. It wasn't their karma. Those of us who lived through it, it was our karma to live through the pandemic. And in a way, it affected everybody. Everyone was probably in some way or the other scared, concerned, worried. But the effect was so different depending on where you lived. In some countries, like I remember in India, the lockdown was announced, I think, at 8 o'clock at night, and midnight, everything was locked down. In other countries, the lockdown was announced 2-3 days in advance. So that itself was a difference in terms of how it was handled. When I went to certain countries in West Africa, like Ivory Coast and Togo, they never had a lockdown. When in China, we read even last year they had lockdowns. So same pandemic, but the way it affected us was differed based on where we are. And it's not by accident that we are where we are. So it was part of our karma to have a specific experience of the pandemic, which manifested, for example, through where we are. Then, even in a specific country or in a specific city, some people died. Some people fell sick. Some people were in ICU. Some lost loved ones. Others said it was the best time of their life because they didn't have to drive to work, didn't have to deal with traffic or parking problems. They could stay at home and work and make all the money. So it's same pandemic. One person says best time of my life. Another person says worst time of my life. Some people, because of staying at home, they had massive relationship issues. Other people staying at home, this is for the first time we have so much time with our family. So it's the same global karma, but how it affects us depends on our individual karmas. So we all had a certain, just listen, we all had a certain karma to go through at that time, which is why we lived through it. So in that sense, it was global. But how each of us was individually affected, sometimes even positively, would be our personal karma. Yeah.
Okay, so how does it affect to that one single person,
Which single person?
like the Hitler or the Truman?
Bad karma,
You
no?
know,
It would be bad karma for Hitler. Is that your question?
yeah, I mean,
So it
it's
would be
a,
bad
it's a,
karma. Someone like Hitler having caused that kind of suffering for so many people, it would be horrendous karma. It would be really bad karma for him.
oh, thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. So that's it for today. When's our next session? I think our next session is next week. We have a session next week. Yes. So next session is on the 13th of February. And then we also have a session on the 14th. So 13th, 14th, same time, 10 a.m. India time. And we continue with the section on violet prana. So for now, let's end with a prayer. And I do hope your healing is going on. I'm hoping many of you are, at least the 10 simple cases should definitely be done. That shouldn't be too difficult. And if possible, even, who knows, 4, 5, or the more difficult advanced cases. So you're more than halfway, or at least close to halfway. All right, let's end. To the Supreme Being, Divine Father, Mother, thank you for all the blessings, for your presence, for your guidance, for all the healing, for your help and protection. Thank you. To Grandmaster Chuakox, we thank you, Master, for your wonderful blessings. Thank you for guiding us through the certification process and for helping us become better, more effective, more efficient healers. To all the holy gurus, all the holy masters, all the saints, all the angels, the archangels, to all the spiritual helpers and beings of light, to all the great ones, thank you for your blessings. Thank you for your presence, for your guidance, for all the healing. Thank you for your help and protection. Thank you in full faith. With gratitude, with respect, with love, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Namaste. Thank you for your presence. See you next week. Happy healing.